Teddy Nightmare.
Welcome to Teddy's Nightmares, your portal to the spine-tingling, hair-raising tales of the unexpected. I'm your guide through these harrowing stories, where everyday scenarios spiral into the realm of the bizarre and the uncanny. Tonight, I'll be sharing tales that stretch the bounds of reality, from a disorienting trip to a grocery store to the confounding depths of the backrooms. Each story weaves a tapestry of suspense and mystery, challenging your perception of the normal. So, brace yourself for a journey into the heart of the unknown. But first, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to join me on this chilling adventure. Now, let's step into the world where the mundane becomes the extraordinary. Story 1. It was a day like any other. School had just let out, and I was making my way back home, my backpack feeling heavier with each step. As I opened the door, I was greeted by my older sister, her face lit up with a spontaneous idea. She asked if I'd like to accompany her to the store to pick up a few things. Eager for a break from my usual routine, I agreed without hesitation, and we set off. The drive to the store was uneventful, filled with the usual chit-chat and the comforting hum of the car engine. But as we approached the store, something unusual caught our eye. The parking lot, typically bustling with activity, was nearly deserted. We exchanged puzzled glances but shrugged it off as an odd coincidence. Parking the car in the eerily empty lot, we hopped out and made our way inside. We grabbed a cart and began wandering the aisles, my sister listing off the things she needed. Everything seemed normal at first, but then things took a strange turn. As we were browsing, my sister suddenly stopped and asked me to head over to the pasta section to grab a package of spaghetti. I complied, making my way to the aisle and picking up a packet. I returned to where I had left her, but she asked me again, "Go get a package of spaghetti." I was a bit perplexed, wondering if she hadn't noticed the packet in my hand, but I decided to go back anyway. Returning to the pasta aisle, I was met with an unsettling sight. The shelves were completely empty. The previously well-stocked aisle was now barren. A chill ran down my spine. I rushed back to find my sister, but she was nowhere in sight. Panic set in as I roamed the aisles, now noticing that almost all the shelves were empty. The store had transformed into a ghostly shell of its former self. My heart pounded in my chest, and confusion swirled in my mind. What was happening? Then, amidst the eerie silence, I heard my name being called from one of the aisles. I hesitantly made my way toward the sound, half expecting another bizarre twist. To my relief, I found my sister there. But even more surprising was that the aisle was back to normal, stocked with products, and people were milling about the store as if nothing had happened. The whole episode felt surreal. When I asked my sister where she had gone, she looked at me quizzically and said she had been in the same aisle all along. I tried to explain what I had experienced, but the words tangled on my tongue, the whole ordeal sounding unbelievable even to my own ears. We finished our shopping in silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something unexplainable had just occurred, a glitch in reality that left me questioning everything I knew about the world around me. That trip to the store remains one of the most puzzling and unnerving experiences of my life, a moment when the ordinary turned extraordinary, leaving me with more questions than answers. Story 2. Trapped in the infinite halls, my descent into the backrooms. I've got a story that I've been holding onto for a while now. It's something I experienced that still sends shivers down my spine. You might have heard of the backrooms, an urban legend about an endless maze of monotonous rooms. I always thought it was just an online myth until one fateful exploration changed my perspective on reality. A few weeks ago, I ventured into an old, derelict office building on the outskirts of my town. Urban exploration is my thing. I love the thrill of uncovering the hidden, forgotten parts of the city. This building was a relic of the past, its hallways echoing with the ghosts of busier times. I was on the third floor, moving through the desolation with my camera at the ready, capturing the decay. That's when I noticed a door, slightly open, at the end of a long, shadowy hallway. Driven by an explorer's curiosity, I nudged it open, expecting another scene of abandonment. But what greeted me was entirely out of place. The room was expansive, impossibly so, stretching beyond the physical confines of the building. It was lit by stuttering fluorescent lights, casting a sickly hue over the stained, peeling wallpaper. The air was stale, heavy with a silence so profound it felt suffocating. Bewildered but intrigued, I stepped inside, only to hear the door shut behind me. When I turned back, the door was gone, replaced by a seamless wall. A surge of panic hit me. I was trapped in this aberrant space. I walked, or more accurately, I wandered. It felt like an eternity, passing through an endless succession of identical rooms and corridors. The monotony was maddening. My phone, my only connection to the outside world, quickly lost signal and then power, leaving me enveloped in near complete darkness. The isolation was unbearable. The silence began to fracture, giving way to faint, incoherent whispers that seemed to seep from the walls. The whispers grew, becoming a cacophony of unintelligible voices that seemed to mock my predicament. In my wandering, I stumbled upon a peculiar room, distinct from the others. Its walls were lined with mirrors, reflecting not only my disheveled appearance but also faces I couldn't recognize. These faces were twisted in expressions of horror and despair, their eyes following me as I moved. The air in the room was colder, thick with a sense of foreboding. As I backed away from the haunting images, I bumped into something solid. It was the door I had initially entered through, now mysteriously reappeared. Without hesitation, I flung it open and bolted out, finding myself back in the dilapidated hallway of the office building. I left the building and haven't returned since. The experience has left a lasting impact on me. I've tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, a hallucination induced by the eerie atmosphere of the building. But deep down, I know what I experienced was real. The backrooms, as far as I can tell, are a glitch in our reality, a liminal space that defies our understanding of physics and logic. It's a place where the walls seem to whisper secrets and where time and space lose all meaning. Story 3. I've got a story that I need to get off my chest. It's about an experience I had with the so-called backrooms. This happened a few months ago. I'm an amateur urban explorer and I often venture into abandoned buildings for the thrill of it. One day, I came across this old, decrepit warehouse on the outskirts of town. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The perfect spot for exploration, or so I thought. Inside, it was a maze of hallways and empty rooms, each one more dilapidated than the last. Graffiti adorned the walls, and debris littered the floors. It was eerie but exciting in its own way. I was making my way through the maze of corridors, camera in hand, capturing the desolation, when I stumbled upon a door. It was different from the others, newer, cleaner. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Beyond the door was a series of rooms and hallways that didn't match the warehouse's interior. The walls were lined with a nauseating yellow wallpaper, and the air smelled stale and old. The fluorescent lights above flickered with a maddening inconsistency. As I ventured deeper, a sense of unease grew within me. The layout was nonsensical, rooms looping back on themselves, always leading to dead ends. I checked my phone for the time, but it was dead, even though I had charged it before coming in. That's when panic set in. I tried to retrace my steps, but nothing looked familiar. The rooms seemed to rearrange themselves, trapping me in an endless labyrinth. The only sound was the buzz of the lights and my own footsteps. It was suffocating, the isolation complete. Hours passed, or at least it felt like hours. Time seemed distorted, elongated. The silence was occasionally broken by what sounded like distant, muffled conversations, but whenever I followed the sounds, they would fade into nothing. Eventually, I stumbled into a room that was colder than the rest. In the center, there was an old television set, the screen flickering with static. As I approached it, the static cleared, revealing a live feed of the room I was standing in, but from a different angle. I spun around, but there was no camera in sight. When I looked back at the screen, my own confused expression stared back at me. Then, the screen went black. In that moment of absolute terror, I heard a door slam shut behind me. I turned and ran towards the sound, finding myself back in the dilapidated corridors of the warehouse. I didn't stop to look back. I just ran until I was out in the open air, gasping for breath. Since that day, I've given up urban exploration. The experience in the warehouse, in those impossible rooms, has left me with a deep-seated fear of enclosed spaces. I still have nightmares about being trapped in that endless maze of rooms, the feeling of utter isolation, and the flickering television screen with my own image. Story 4. This story is about my unnerving experience that aligns eerily with the concept of the Backrooms. I always thought those stories were just internet fiction until one day. It started as a typical Saturday. I was at home, just chilling after a long week. My boredom led me to a nearby abandoned warehouse, a spot popular among urban explorers. I had been there a couple of times before, but that day, I felt a strange pull to revisit. The warehouse was as creepy as ever, with its crumbling walls and the echo of my footsteps being the only sound. I ventured deeper into the building, my flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. That's when I stumbled upon a door I had never noticed before. It was partially concealed behind a hanging tarp. Curious, I pushed it open. The room beyond was unlike any other part of the warehouse. It was a long, narrow hallway, bathed in a sickly yellow light from flickering fluorescent bulbs. The walls were lined with peeling, mustard-colored wallpaper. A musty smell hung in the air. Feeling a mix of curiosity and unease, I started walking down the hallway. But after a few minutes of walking, I realized something was off. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly. I turned around to head back, but the entrance I had come through was gone. Panic set in. I quickened my pace, hoping to find an exit, but the hallway just kept going. It was like a loop, an unending corridor that defied the laws of space. My heart raced as claustrophobia crept in. The only sound was the hum of the lights and my frantic footsteps. Hours seemed to pass. I shouted for help, but my voice was swallowed by the silence. The hallway appeared to warp and twist subtly, disorienting me further. I began to see things in the corner of my eyes, shadows flickering, shapes moving just beyond my line of sight. Just when I thought I was losing my mind, I heard a distant murmur of voices. I followed the sound, desperate for any sign of other people. The voices led me to a room off the hallway, cluttered with old furniture and dusty books. In the room, I found a group of people, as lost and scared as I was. They said they had been exploring the warehouse when they found themselves trapped in this labyrinth. We shared our stories, trying to make sense of the situation. Together, we continued searching for an exit. The corridors seemed to shift and change around us. It was disorienting, like being in a dream. Then, as suddenly as it had started, we found ourselves facing a door. We pushed it open and stumbled out into the familiar, decaying interior of the warehouse. We all quickly parted ways, the experience too bizarre and unsettling to linger on. Since then, I've never gone back to that warehouse. The memory of that endless hallway haunts me. It felt too real to be a hallucination, too structured to be a mere trick of the mind. Story 5. In 2006, a shift in our family's narrative brought us to a quaint, seemingly innocuous house that now serves as the backdrop to a story I struggle to comprehend. My name is Alex, a 15-year-old with an affinity for the unusual, and our new home, nestled in a typical suburban neighborhood, offered more than just larger rooms and a peaceful environment. It presented a mystery that lay hidden in the depths of an otherwise ordinary basement. My transition into this new life was smooth. I particularly reveled in the luxury of my spacious bedroom, a perfect sanctuary for my sprawling gaming setup and teenage escapades. However, a few months post-relocation, my adventurous explorations led me to a discovery in our basement, a discovery that now haunts my waking thoughts. The skepticism of my parents, firmly rooted in the tangible and explainable, meant my claims of the abnormal were met with dismissive chuckles. Unwilling to let my experiences be diminished, I sought evidence through the lens of my camcorder, a 14th birthday gift that had previously captured nothing more than candid moments of teenage frivolity. One morning, under the veil of early light and household silence, I ventured into the basement. It was a typical space, characterized by a chilly concrete floor, aged wooden beams, and the usual clutter of an active family home. Yet, amidst this normalcy, one wall stood in stark defiance of logic. It was enveloped in a shadow that seemed impervious to the laws of physics. Initially, I attributed it to a trick of light or an optical illusion, but the mystery of the wall beckoned with an irresistible pull. With a mixture of anxiety and intrigue, I cautiously approached the anomalous wall. Extending a trembling hand, I braced for the cold, hard surface. Instead, my hand, followed by my entire arm, disappeared into the wall as if penetrating a portal to another dimension. No pain, no resistance, just an empty void. Emboldened and perplexed, I stepped through entirely, the camcorder recording every surreal moment. What unfolded was a sprawling labyrinth, its walls clad in a jarring yellow wallpaper, a stark and unnerving departure from my familiar basement. The air was filled with the persistent hum of fluorescent lights, and the carpet underfoot was oddly moist, as if treading through a forgotten, otherworldly realm. As I traversed the convoluted corridors, I stumbled upon a chilling discovery, a note stained with blood. It spoke of a dreadful entity that stalked these corridors and advised utmost silence for survival. The weight of my isolation in this bizarre expanse was amplified by the realization that a malevolent presence shared this maze. The oppressive silence of the labyrinth was periodically shattered by the creature's disturbingly rapid footsteps. It was an omnipresent threat, casting a pall of dread over my every step. Amidst my exploratory ventures, a macabre revelation underscored the lethal nature of the creature, a decomposing human body gruesomely ensnared in the ceiling, a silent witness to the unspeakable horror that lurked within. Faced with the inevitability of an encounter, my worst fears materialized when I found myself cornered by the abomination. It was a grotesque fusion of centipede-like appendages and an indescribable horror, its numerous limbs writhing in a dance of death, its mouth a gaping void of darkness. Paralyzed with fear, I braced for a gruesome end. In a twist of fate, as terror reached its peak, I was abruptly pulled backward, transitioning through the wall into the realm of reality. I landed in the unexpected setting of a library, amidst startled onlookers and shelves of books. The abrupt shift from the hellish labyrinth to this mundane setting was disorienting, almost dreamlike. The aftermath of my ordeal involved bewildered police officers, a flurry of concerned questions, and my parents grappling with the inexplicable narrative I presented. As I now face the prospect of therapy to unpack this bewildering experience, one unwavering resolution stands firm in my mind: I will forever steer clear of that enigmatic wall, a gateway to a realm of unspeakable terror and unfathomable mysteries. Story 6. In the quiet suburb of Greenwood, the Old Mill Shopping Center stood as a relic from a bygone era. It was mid-October, and the chill of autumn had begun to creep into the evening air, casting a haunting glow over the faded storefronts. The old mill, with its creaking signs and dimly lit corridors, was a place of intrigue for me and my friends, Lisa, a fearless adventurer, Mark, the skeptic, and Sarah, who loved mysteries. It was a Thursday evening, around 8:30 p.m., when we decided to explore the nearly deserted mall. The old mill was known for its peculiar architecture, a confusing maze of shops and corridors that seemed to twist in impossible ways. Rumors of unexplained happenings and eerie noises after dark had circulated for years, adding to its mystique. We entered through the north wing, past the old cinema with its torn posters and the musty smell of popcorn long gone stale. The flickering lights in the corridor cast long shadows, making the mannequins in the abandoned clothing store look almost lifelike. Our journey began with lighthearted exploration, poking around in old stores and laughing at the outdated fashion on display. But as we ventured deeper into the mall, a sense of unease began to grow. The air grew colder, and the silence was punctuated only by our footsteps and the occasional distant echo of a door slamming shut, or was it something else? Lisa, always the bravest, led the way into a section of the mall that seemed older and more neglected. Here, the stores were unmarked, their contents hidden behind layers of dust and grime. We came across an old toy store, its windows obscured by years of neglect. Pressing our faces against the glass, we could make out the shapes of toys and games, untouched for decades. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed through the hallways, causing us to jump. It was distant yet clear, like the cackle of an unseen spectator. Mark joked nervously that it was probably just the wind, but we all knew the sound was too deliberate, too malicious to be the weather. We decided to leave, but as we turned back, we realized the layout of the mall had seemingly changed. Corridors twisted in unfamiliar directions, and stores we had passed earlier were nowhere to be seen. A sense of panic set in as we tried to retrace our steps, only to find dead ends and unfamiliar turns. As we wandered, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The temperature dropped further, and our breaths became visible in the icy air. The once barely audible background noise grew louder, a cacophony of whispers, creaks, and unsettling laughter, as if the mall itself was alive with malevolent intent. In our frantic search for an exit, we stumbled upon a corridor that none of us remembered seeing before. It was narrower than the others, with walls that seemed to close in on us. Halfway down the corridor, we found a door slightly ajar, leading to what appeared to be a storage room. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, we pushed the door open. The room was filled with old mannequins, their blank faces staring into nothingness. As we moved through the room, the door slammed shut behind us, plunging us into darkness. We scrambled for our phones to use as makeshift torches, revealing a scene more horrifying than before. The mannequins were arranged in grotesque poses, some dismembered, others seemingly contorted in expressions of pain and terror. In the corner of the room, a figure stood shrouded in shadows, its form too distorted to be human. The figure moved towards us, its movements jerky and unnatural, as if it were a puppet being controlled by unseen strings. We screamed and ran, pushing past the mannequins and crashing through the door back into the corridor. Our escape from the room did not bring relief, as the mall had transformed into an even more confusing labyrinth. The whispers grew louder, now clearly voices speaking in an unknown language filled with malice and anger. The laughter returned, this time accompanied by footsteps that seemed to be following us. In a desperate attempt to find an exit, we split up, each taking a different corridor. The decision would haunt me forever. I found myself alone, the sounds of my friends' footsteps fading into the distance. The mall seemed to stretch endlessly, each turn leading to more corridors, more stores frozen in time. I stumbled into a room that resembled an old diner, the tables set as if waiting for guests that would never arrive. In the corner, an old jukebox suddenly whirred to life, playing a slow, haunting melody that sent chills down my spine. Panicking, I ran from the diner, only to hear the sounds of my friends screaming in the distance. I followed their cries, but each turn seemed to take me further away. The mall was toying with me, feeding off my fear. After what felt like hours, I found myself in a large open area, the skylights above revealing a starless sky. In the center of the space, an old carousel stood still and silent. As I approached, it began to turn, the painted horses moving up and down with a mind of their own. Then, I saw them, Lisa, Mark, and Sarah, each trapped on the carousel, their expressions frozen in terror. I tried to reach them, but an invisible force held me back. The carousel spun faster, the music growing louder until it was a deafening roar. I screamed for them, but my voice was lost in the chaos. As I watched in horror, the figures of my friends blurred, merging with the horses, becoming part of the carousel's twisted dance. The music stopped abruptly, and I was plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, the carousel was empty, my friends nowhere to be seen. The mall was silent now, the oppressive atmosphere lifted as if nothing had happened. I found my way out of the mall, emerging into the cold night air. The police were called, but a search of the old mill found nothing, no sign of Lisa, Mark, or Sarah. The authorities concluded they had run away, but I knew the truth. I never returned to the old mill shopping center. It was demolished a year later, but the memories of that night haunt me. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear the distant sound of a carousel, and I know my friends are still there, trapped in the endless ride. Story 7. As a teenager, I had a penchant for making reckless decisions. These often resulted in minor scrapes or, occasionally, pleading my innocence to a stern sheriff from the back of a squad car. My friends and I, seen as mostly harmless thrill seekers, embraced these adventures. However, one incident in my senior year left a lasting, haunting imprint on my memory. Travis, the mastermind of our group, often came up with wild ideas. One autumn day, he proposed a new adventure, breaking into the abandoned Thornhill Hotel's pool. The hotel, temporarily closed for bed-bug fumigation, was rumored to have an unlocked pool house. The allure of an illicit swim, combined with the promise of joining Leah and her friends, was too tempting to pass up. That evening, I joined Travis and others in the back of his truck. We sped through the streets, the cool October air brushing against my skin. Leah and her friends, along with a few cases of beer, were our final pickups before heading to the hotel. The hotel, shrouded in darkness and partially covered in black plastic, had an eerie abandoned feel. Yet, the pool house glowed faintly with a neon green light from the exit signs. Travis, ever the daredevil, quickly found a way to unlock the doors from the inside. Despite any foreboding signs, we didn't hesitate. We plunged into the water, our laughter and splashes echoing in the pool house. The night was unfolding like many others, filled with youthful indiscretion and carefree antics. After a while, I moved to the pool's edge, my mind slightly foggy from the beer. Ignoring the warnings against diving in the shallow water, I took a leap. My world instantly transformed. Instead of the familiar pool bottom, I found myself swimming towards a shimmering surface. Breaking through, I was suddenly in a completely different environment. I emerged in a vast, brightly lit pit, surrounded by towering walls and glaring fluorescent lights. This place, alien and intimidating, had no exits or ledges for rest. My calls for help echoed back, mocking my isolation. The continuous buzz of the lights and my own labored swimming were the only sounds in this eerie void. In a desperate bid for escape, I dove back into the water, aiming for another shimmering surface I had noticed at the bottom. This led me into a dark, narrow tunnel, its walls lined with slimy, organic tendrils. A chilling sound of metal scraping against concrete grew louder, heightening my fear. In a panic, I swam through another shimmering portal. I found myself in a foggy, open body of water under a moonlit sky. The serene lake was a stark contrast to the tunnel's horror. But my relief was short-lived. Spotting a large truss bridge in the distance, I swam towards it, only to discover a macabre scene. Dozens of bodies were hanging from the bridge, some decayed, some hauntingly fresh. As I gazed in horror, the scraping sound returned. Looking up, I saw a nightmarish figure descending towards me. It was humanoid but inhuman, with eyeless pits and chains where hands should be. It reached for me with a malevolent intent. Driven by primal fear, I dove deep into the lake, swimming desperately to evade this monstrous being. I pushed my exhausted body to its limits, racing towards another neon light I spotted below. As my consciousness faded, I finally emerged, coughing and gasping, on the familiar concrete floor of the hotel pool house. My friends, including Travis, surrounded me with worried expressions. I had mysteriously disappeared and reappeared, leaving them bewildered. I warned them vehemently against entering the water, my voice hoarse with terror. That night marked the end of my reckless adventures. The haunting memories of the sinister, alternate realms I had inadvertently traversed, and the grotesque creature I had encountered, lingered in my mind. It served as a chilling reminder of the unseen dangers lurking beneath the surface of our seemingly mundane world. Wow, these stories really send chills down the spine, don't they? It's amazing and a little terrifying to think about how the world around us can be so much more mysterious and unpredictable than we often assume. Whether these tales are products of overactive imaginations, glitches in reality, or something entirely otherworldly, they remind us of the thin veil that separates the known from the unknown. Now, I have to ask you, my brave listeners, what do you think about these stories? Have you ever experienced anything similar, something that defied explanation or logic? How did it change your view of the world? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'm eager to hear what you have to say. If you enjoyed these spine-tingling tales and want to dive deeper into the mysteries of our world, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any of our future explorations into the unknown and the unexplained.